George Harrison, a name not only associated with the Beatles but also a symbol of talent, tranquility, and timeless values. However, few know that behind the brilliance of a legend, George faced painful tragedies and rumors that have never been clarified. Today, Paul McCartney, George's close friend and brother, has finally spoken out to confirm the truth about his regrettable death. What really happened in the final days of George Harrison's life, and why does this story move the world so much? Let's explore this emotional story, a story about talent, friendship, and the peacefulness in the final days of a legend. This is not just a story about George Harrison, it's the story of a person who lived fully for music, love, and spiritual connection. We really became friends in Germany. They were my favorite group even then, Paul McCartney once recalled. George's childhood and journey into music began in Liverpool in the 1940s, a typical working-class city in post-war England where narrow streets and bustling factories were a familiar sight. In this context, on February 25, 1943, a boy named George Harold Harrison was born, becoming the youngest of 4 siblings. George's father, Harold Harrison, was a bus conductor, while his mother, Louise, was a gentle woman fond of music and always supportive of her children. Their modest home in the suburbs of Liverpool often echoed with music from Louise's small radio, where music quietly planted the seed in young George's heart. George grew up in a loving environment, and his mother's passion for music deeply influenced him. The boy would often sit for hours by the radio, mesmerized by the vibrant rock and roll melodies of Elvis Presley, Little Richard, and Buddy Holly. Music was not just entertainment, it became something that touched his soul. It was Louise, with a mother's sensitivity, who recognized the growing passion in her son and decided to buy him a cheap guitar. Nevertheless, the first steps with the guitar were not easy. George's small hands hurt as he pressed the strings, and the first notes didn't sound harmonious at all. But George did not give up. The patience and determination of the 13-year-old boy turned the old guitar into a loyal companion. Day by day, music began to shape George's life, turning his dream of large stages into a real goal. An important milestone came during his high school years when George met Paul McCartney at the Liverpool Institute. Paul, 1 year older than George, was quickly impressed by the talent and persistence of this small but passionate boy. It was Paul who introduced George to John Lennon, who was then leading a small band called the Quarrymen. Initially, John was a bit hesitant about adding George to the group because he was too young, but after just a few jam sessions, George's talent convinced John. Joining the Quarrymen was a major turning point in George's life. Though the youngest, he quickly proved his skillful guitar playing and calm demeanor in the small performances at local venues in Liverpool. George not only learned but also began to develop his own unique guitar style. From a boy growing up in a humble working-class family, George Harrison started to assert his talent and determination. His journey into music was not a fairy tale but the result of constant effort and a pure love for music. This spirit is what helped George go further, becoming an indispensable part of the legendary band the Beatles and creating a timeless legacy. George Harrison, often referred to as the Silent Beatle, was an indispensable part of the Beatles' history. Although not as prominent as John Lennon or Paul McCartney, George left an indelible mark with his role as a talented musician and an ever-creative figure, constantly seeking innovation in music. From the moment he joined the band, George brought a calm demeanor and a unique spirit of exploration. As the youngest member of the group, he took on the role of lead guitarist and quickly proved his talent through creative riffs and melodies. Unlike Lennon and McCartney, who focused on traditional pop and rock styles, George was drawn to world music, especially the instruments and sounds of India. This curiosity led him to the sitar, a traditional Indian instrument, which first appeared in the song Norwegian Wood from the album Rubber Soul, 1965. This marked the first introduction of the sitar sound into Western pop music, opening a new era of cultural musical fusion. George not only played the instrument but also studied directly under the legendary musician Ravi Shankar, making himself a bridge between Eastern and Western music. Although often overshadowed by Lennon and McCartney, George composed several classic Beatles songs. One of them, Something, is a beautiful love song from the Abbey Road, 1969, album. Paul McCartney praised it as one of the best songs the Beatles ever made. Something not only achieved commercial success but also affirmed George's talent as an independent songwriter within the group. Alongside it, the song Here Comes the Sun, also from Abbey Road, became one of the iconic tracks filled with light and hope. On the other hand, George's journey in the Beatles was not always smooth. He often felt overshadowed by the dominance of Lennon and McCartney in songwriting and controlling the music. There were times when George wrote a number of songs, but only a few were included in albums, which made him feel undervalued. This tension reached its peak during the filming of Let It Be, 1969, when George and Paul had an argument. In a famous moment, George told Paul, "You just tell me how to play, and I'll play it that way." This statement not only expressed his frustration but also reflected the pressure he faced within the band. Although conflicts occasionally strained relationships, George remained the one who brought balance and depth to the Beatles' music. He not only enriched the band's sound but also infused it with a special spiritual essence. His songs often carried lyrical, emotional tones and reflections on life, love, and the meaning of existence. But the relationships between the members were no longer the same. The exhaustion and tension from working together made it impossible for the Beatles to continue, and in 1970, after the release of the Let It Be album, the band officially disbanded. The end of the Beatles was a huge shock to fans and the music world, but for George Harrison, it was an opportunity for him to create freely, shining with a solo career. After the Beatles disbanded, George Harrison shone with his solo career. His debut album, All Things Must Pass, was not only an artistic success but also an important milestone in his solo career. Released right after the Beatles' breakup, All Things Must Pass made a strong impression with its depth in every song. With the hit My Sweet Lord, George Harrison became the first Beatle to have a solo song reach the top of the Billboard charts. This song was not only about worshiping faith but also a unique blend of pop, gospel, and spiritual elements, clearly reflecting George's quest to merge music with religious beliefs. On the other hand, George was not only notable for his songwriting and performance skills, he was also known as a talented music producer. Throughout his career, George collaborated with many great artists, including Eric Clapton, Bob Dylan, and Ringo Starr, to create groundbreaking music. One of the standout projects George participated in was the supergroup Traveling Wilburys, formed in the late 1980s. Along with Bob Dylan, Roy Orbison, Jeff Lynne, and Tom Petty, George created hits like Handle with Care and End of the Line, showing that he could still shine even without being part of the Beatles. Traveling Wilburys was not just a band but also a symbol of the collaboration between talented individuals and genuine friendship. In addition to music, George made significant contributions to the film industry. In 1978, he founded the production company Handmade Films and helped save the project Monty Python's Life of Brian from being cancelled. Thanks to George's support, the company produced many famous films, further establishing George's name in the film industry. His film career demonstrated that George's creative talents extended beyond music and into other fields, where he continued to challenge and explore himself. One of the most remarkable aspects of George Harrison's career was his deep relationship with spirituality. In the years after the Beatles' breakup, George sought not only freedom in music but also in his personal life through the exploration of Eastern philosophies. The influence of Indian philosophy is evident in songs like Within You Without You and The Inner Light, where he blended Western and Eastern musical elements. George became one of the first artists to introduce Indian music into the Western popular music scene while spreading a message of harmony between material and spiritual life. With achievements in both music and film, George received widespread recognition. He won many prestigious awards throughout his career, including a Grammy, and was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame not just once but twice, once with the Beatles and once more for his solo career. Though he was not always at the forefront of the music industry, George Harrison proved that depth and genuine dedication are the qualities that create a legend. Although he achieved many remarkable accomplishments in music and film, George Harrison's life was not always smooth. After victories and glory, he faced a more brutal battle, a challenge that no one could have predicted. At the end of 1999, George Harrison faced one of the most terrifying challenges of his life. Living in the tranquility of his home in Henley-on-Thames, he could never have imagined that a delusional intruder would invade that private space and disrupt his life. The attacker, Michael Abram, a man with mental issues who believed George Harrison was the embodiment of evil, sneaked into his house in the dead of night, armed with a knife. Abram attacked George while he was lying in his bedroom, causing serious injuries. Regardless of trying to fight back, George was stabbed multiple times in the chest, putting him in critical condition. Fortunately, his wife, Olivia, discovered the incident and intervened in time. She used a lamp to strike the intruder, helping George escape from this dreadful situation. But although he survived, the attack left a deep psychological scar on George. The image of the attacker, the suddenness, and the violence of the incident haunted him. This led George to become more reclusive than ever, withdrawing from public events and limiting his contact with the media. His home was no longer a peaceful refuge but a place where he felt he could never be completely safe. Along with this, the darker aspects of his life led him to seek peace more than ever. Among all the challenges George had faced, nothing was more painful than confronting illness. In spite of living a life full of passion and seeking enlightenment through music and philosophy, George could not escape the waves of fate. In 1997, he was diagnosed with throat cancer, a disease that doctors believed might have been a consequence of his long-standing smoking habit from his youth. The battles with illness followed one after another, but George did not easily succumb. He underwent harsh treatments, from radiation to chemotherapy, fighting day by day. However, despite his resilience and never giving up hope, the disease relentlessly recurred in the following years. The cancer spread to his lungs and gradually ravaged his body. Even so, throughout this time, he maintained a strong spirit, refusing to let the pain weaken his faith and strength. He turned to spiritual values to soothe his physical pain and seek inner peace. As part of his long journey in life, George always saw music and Indian philosophy as a source of inspiration that helped him get through the toughest times. However, by the end of 2001, when his condition became too severe, George passed away at the age of 58, leaving a deep sense of sorrow for his family, friends, and fans around the world. Although George Harrison's life was full of challenges and pain, he passed away in peace, leaving behind a profound musical and spiritual legacy. Nevertheless, right after the sad news of his death was announced, rumors about the relationship between George and the members of the Beatles, especially Paul McCartney, began to spread, causing unfounded speculation. But did tensions truly exist between them in the final years of George's life, or were they just misunderstandings? We will explore the truth in the next part when Paul McCartney officially addresses these rumors. When the sad news of George Harrison's death was announced, the public immediately buzzed with unpleasant rumors about the relationship between him and the members of the Beatles, particularly between George and Paul McCartney. Numerous conflicting stories spread, suggesting that the two had an unfavorable relationship, even conflicting in the final years of George's life. However, in an emotional interview after George's death, Paul McCartney spoke out to completely dismiss these rumors, affirming that their relationship was never broken and that all misunderstandings were the result of inaccurate speculations. Paul began the interview with deep sorrow. "Yes, I am very sad. I feel paralyzed," he shared. "We had known he had been ill for a long time, and it's sad to hear that he has passed away. I spoke to Olivia, and she is very strong. I want to ask everyone to be kind to her and Donnie, George's son, at this time." With these words, Paul not only expressed his own grief but also showed deep empathy for George's family, affirming that in the most difficult moments, both Olivia and Donnie were strong and deserved support. Paul's words continued to erase any doubts about the relationship between him and George. "He was a wonderful person. I love him very much. I grew up with him, and I love to remember the great moments we had together in Liverpool and in the days with the Beatles, and even up until now." Despite rumors suggesting that George and Paul were no longer close in the final years, Paul emphasized that their friendship and affection were always intact. The memories from their early days together, conquering music and sharing dreams, could never be dulled by misunderstandings or temporary conflicts. One of the moments that particularly moved Paul in the interview was when he recalled the last meeting with George, just a few weeks before George's passing. "He was quite weak at that time, but we still laughed and talked as if nothing had happened. He was always a very brave person, and I was really impressed with his strength. But I also felt that he would be like that because that's who he was." These words were not only an acknowledgement of George's strength and resilience but also reflected the truth that, despite his failing health, George's spirit remained positive, always maintaining his cheerfulness and bravery, qualities that Paul always admired in his friend. The stories Paul shared were not only beautiful memories of music but also intimate moments between two friends, two brothers. "We were childhood friends, then joined the Beatles and went through all those things together. But as I said, he passed away peacefully, and I feel that is a blessing. Now, I just want to think about all the wonderful moments we had together." Paul confirmed that in George's final moments, he passed away peacefully, with no division between them. The rumors of a conflict between Paul and George were completely unfounded, and their relationship was always built on a solid foundation of friendship. Finally, Paul shared a heartfelt message about how he would remember his friend. "He was a wonderful person, and I will remember him with all the warmth that I think he would want to be remembered. I loved him. He was like a little brother to me. I will remember him through silly stories, joyful memories. That's how I choose to remember him." These words not only honored an outstanding individual in music but also celebrated a friendship, a brotherly bond that was not weakened by rumors or unforeseen events. With these sincere and profound reflections, Paul McCartney not only clarified the true nature of his relationship with George Harrison but also helped dispel the rumors of conflict that had been previously doubted by the public. The relationship between Paul and George was always a lasting friendship, regardless of the hardships throughout their lives. And even though George had passed, that affection would forever live in Paul's heart, as well as in the hearts of those who loved the Beatles and the values the band brought to the world. George Harrison was an artist, a friend, and an icon. He left a legacy not only in music but also in the way he lived with peace and compassion. Paul McCartney confirmed that George left with a peaceful heart, dispelling any malicious rumors. The story of George Harrison is a testament to the power of love, friendship, and art. Although George Harrison has left this world, his musical and spiritual legacy lives on in the hearts of those who loved him. His songs, especially during his time with the Beatles, are not only a testament to his extraordinary talent but also a profound message about life, love, and spiritual connection. George Harrison was not just a musician, he was someone who used music as a tool to connect with the soul, an inspiration for a generation, and will forever be an integral part of global music. George Harrison's death is a great loss, but as he himself said in the song "All Things Must Pass," everything will pass, and only love and music are eternal. Therefore, even though George has passed, his legacy will live on in the hearts of those who loved him. And as Paul McCartney confirmed, George left peacefully and with love, and that is the greatest gift he left for the world. Thank you for watching this video about George Harrison, a music legend and a beloved friend of ours. If you find this video meaningful and want to share your memories of George, don't forget to leave a comment below. Let us know your thoughts on the legacy he left behind and the impact of George in your music. If you love this video, don't forget to like and share to spread the love for George Harrison's music to more people. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss the next exciting videos about music legends and inspiring stories.